BeTheTalk, episode 276, featuring Chetna Vasishth. Welcome to BeTheTalk. We go behind the talk 7 days a week for tips and techniques to help you change the world. I'm Nathan Eckel, and a talker myself. I'm interviewing others who change the world with their talk. You can too, even if you've never given a talk before. Let's get started with today's show. We are live with Chetna Vasishth. Chetna, are you ready to talk?
I'm good to go, Nathan. Thank you so much for having me on your show today.
Chetna Vasishth is an MBA, ex-banker, education-ist, the founder of ChetChat, India's largest online career and education talk show. I've checked out her YouTube channel at YouTube, ChetChat 101, and it is a powerful thing. You've got millions of views over there. Chetna, welcome to the talk.
Thank you so much for that warm introduction, Nathan. I'm very excited to be here.
Chetna, you really talk about the the fourth industrial revolution, and the fact that the magic really happens not when we become very specialized in only one area, but when we become interdisciplinary. And you had a really interesting series of diagrams. You had like the symbol for pi, which has if you guys can remember the pi signal or symbol, it's got two verticals which represent the right brain expertise and the left brain expertise, and then that slash above the top, which is kind of broader knowledge. That might be a really good place to start. You use that as a symbol of using two different disciplines and the right and the left brain to reach out and connect with other people. Chetna, welcome to the talk.
Thank you, Nathan. Thank you so much. And I'm so glad that you like the channel. And I'm also glad that the idea of the pie appeal to you. But I'll take you back a bit into the underpinnings of this whole idea and where it came from. So the first one is that in India, we tend to be very STEM focused when it comes to our careers, and we tend to choose our careers in a very conventional manner. I've met people who tell me that I'm a good artist, I'm a good sports person, but my uncle thinks that I should be a computer engineer. The second underpinning of this thought process was that we tend to sidestep our passions, our interests, our areas of strength, and we sometimes just ignore them. And some families tend to think of them as mere distractions. And the third was the World Economic Forum that came out and said that, in 10 years from now, 65% of our jobs would be redundant and people would be doing completely new and different things to what they've been doing till now. So that set me thinking about careers, passions, jobs, and whole brain thinking. And I did some research on the career trajectories of successful people. Mm-hmm. And guess what I found there? That almost everyone who'd made a success in the new age dynamic that is prevalent today, almost everyone had a liberal arts and a computer science and a philosophy and a history and an economics thrown in liberal measure. Mm-hmm. So they had their passions. So we spoke about Nobel laureates being painters, more likely than anybody else being a painter or a poet. So that was really the thought process that brought me onto this idea that we need two major specializations with a broad generalist knowledge to pivot, because you know how the pie will beautifully pivot. So to pivot to these new careers that are going to keep coming up in the future.
Well, and I love the examples that you gave. I mean, you talked about Roger Federer, and you talked about Jeff Bezos, and then you talked about someone that I bumped into at a shopping mall in. I'm not usually in Gurgaon, just outside of New Delhi, but I saw Sachin in person. You talk about these great exemplars of athletics and business, and how they took that brilliant pivot by doing exactly what you're talking about, what you found in your research. be able to merge those two specialties. So, what was it about your journey that really brought you to this point to where you really started researching what worked for other people's journey, Chetna?
So looking back at my own journey, I started with an undergrad in economics. I went on to do an MBA in human resources, and I took on a corporate banking sales job in a bank and lasted about 10 years and pivoted on to education because that's where I think my calling was. But combining banking and education, I set up a training company that was training bankers. And then combining the art of training with a new acquired skill in the social media side, I pivoted and set up this YouTube channel. So I found that if you have one skill, the other one you can keep acquiring and pivoting. And then you have two to choose between. You pick one of them and you may acquire a new skill, and that gives you the ability to pivot because you have two choices. Hypothetically, you can pivot. I could have pivoted on banking or I could have pivoted on education. And so it gives you a greater flexibility. And that's what happened in my career. And that's the reason I was invited to this TED Talk is because the theme of this TED Talk was reboot, rethink.
Reboot, rethink.
Reboot, rethink. Yeah. So this sort of fitted in with the whole idea of how do you reboot yourself and your careers going forward by being multidisciplinary.
Well, and you've really led the way on your ChetChat YouTube channel because you're doing something very similar to what I've been doing to even actually greater measure. You've got all kinds of interviews and you've got them arranged by type of occupation. You've got them very well organized. And I was actually taking a few notes when I looked at your channel just because I need to clear up enough time to better classify what I've been doing. It's so great. What tips do you have for others of us that are interviewing and then classifying information and taking this interviewing skill and really documenting and marrying it with other skills to be able to entertain and inspire? What general tips do you have for me as well as other people that are in the interviewing space?
Thank you so much, Nathan. That was a very generous compliment. But in my channel, I would say that there are three things that I would sort of give away as tips at this point. The first being when I interview somebody, to me, the guest is very respectable. So there's a lot of respect I give them. There's a lot of importance I give them, their ideas. And I don't sort of contradict them or I don't sort of try to show my own knowledge to them. That's one thing I always follow as a rule when I have a guest on my show. The second is that I know I'm talking to students. So when I frame my questions, I always think like a student at the time, saying, what is it that the student would want to know from this guest? And I jot down all the questions saying, how do I overcome my stress when I'm sitting in an exam hall, etc. So the questions that I put are completely with the audience in mind. And the third thing is about your question of categorizing this information is, of course, there is input from SEO. But at the time when I release the video, and in your case, the TED Talk, I do the categorization right there and then because like you have a ton of talks. I have about 180 videos on the channel. So if I go back and I say, now can I classify them on one Sunday, it'll never happen. So I do it there and then. I say, okay, where all is this going? And boom, it's sorted and I'm on to the next video.
Excellent. So keeping your audience in mind, keeping your guest in mind and helping them to shine, and then do the classification, the tagging, the SEO on the spot rather than looking back. Three great tips for all of us, Talk Universe. And we're going to pivot right over to you in a moment. You've been enjoying this. We've been enjoying our talk with Chetna Vasishth. And we are going to see you, Talk Universe, and talk about you and your journey in just a moment over in the Blitz Round. Hey, Talk Universe. I hope you've been enjoying today's episode with today's guest. But you know what? Many people want more than that. Many people that listen to Be the Talk actually want to give a talk. And if that's you, you're not alone. Listen to the rest of this podcast. At the end, I'll have a free resource for you just for listening. And we're back with the Blitz Round with Chetna Vasishth. And it is time for a series of either or questions related to the preparation and performance of Chetna's talk. Chetna, are you ready?
I'm totally ready, Nathan.
All right. First question. I think you already answered it. I heard that you got invited to speak instead of having to apply. Is that correct?
Yes, I think I was blessed. So what happened was that there was a newspaper, the New Indian Express, that featured me on the 18 people to watch out for in 2018.
Oh, watch out for? Well, like you're dangerous, or I'm looking behind my back, Talk Universe. I couldn't help but tell the joke. I'm sorry. That sounded kind of threatening, like in a good way to look for. To
look out for. Okay. And the director of the Armed Forces Medical College, where I finally went for the TED Talk, saw the newspaper, reached out to me on LinkedIn and said, hey, you rebooted your career so many times, and the theme of the talk is reboot. So, hey, would you like to come over and talk at the event? And I was jumping and saying yes. Excellent.
So now you walk out on stage. Did you memorize? Did you improvise? Or did you memorize, improvise, or did you blend?
Okay, I have about 15 years of training experience. So I've done a lot of improvisation in the past, but for this forum, primarily because of the importance of the forum and also because of the strict deadline, I primarily memorized, and I would recommend that as well. However, I think once you start coming from a position of passion with the ideas, the thoughts just flow whenever memory fails.
Excellent. So what's a tip, tool, or technique that helped you?
Okay. One of the tips that really helped me was that I recorded the entire TED Talk in my own voice on my phone, like a podcast. And I would hear it when I was in the car or when I was, sometimes even before going to bed. And I found that my subconscious was working on it. Just hearing my own voice helped me remember some of the words when I was at a loss on the stage.
Yeah. Well, Talk Universe, that's so important because she's right. The subconscious, your subconscious will work on this stuff once you give it a directive, and once you sleep on it, it really does go to work, and you wake up the next day with sometimes solutions or sometimes better ways of doing things, and sometimes real clarity and perspective that you didn't have. Here's my final question. What was the most unexpected, strange, or just plain weird thing that happened during or right before your talk?
Okay, right before my talk, the microphones failed. So this was this huge TEDx event happening, and the institution, by the way, had excellent microphone systems of their own. But because they thought, this is this great big event happening, let's hire help, let's get the professionals in. And they got the professionals in, and unfortunately, it backfired. And there was no collar mic. So you'll probably see my TED Talk with me holding on to a mic.
Oh, yeah. Well, it helps to have a backup. And I understand tech issues. On a day like today, I understand the tech issues. So we've been enjoying this talk with Chetna Vasishth. Her talk is called Future Proof Your Career. And you can check out her YouTube channel. Is probably the best place to go. You can go to YouTube, and then ChetChat 101 is the YouTube channel. And we're going to be back with Chetna Vasishth in just a moment for the final word of advice. Hey, Talk Universe, I hope you enjoyed today's episode. And if you want to give the talk to change the world, but you don't know how or even where to start, No problem at all. Go to BeTheTalk.com/get accepted for my new 5-day email course that'll show you how. Absolutely free. Just go to BeTheTalk.com/get accepted. And we're back with Chetna Vasishth and the final word of advice for Talk Universe.
So one of the things, Nathan, I want to say is that while you're doing any of these branded talks, the audience may not always get your jokes. So keep that in mind when you're crafting your speech. So don't get disappointed if they don't start laughing. Just carry on and pretend like nothing happened.
Great word of advice. Chetna Vasishth, thank you so much for coming on the talk today and sharing your wisdom with Talk Universe.
Thank you, Nathan, for having me. It was a great pleasure to be on Be The Talk, and I wish you all the best going forward.
Thanks for listening to Be The Talk. For tips and resources to help you change the world, go to BeTheTalk.com. See you tomorrow.